Hello to all the suffering addicts and hello to all the people who have found sanity in the recovery lifestyle. In this episode of Stories of Addiction, I will be talking with Heather about her addiction and her recovery from addiction. Hi, Heather. Welcome to Responsible Recovery Podcast.
Hi, Frankie.
It's nice to have you here. So let's get started, Heather. How did your addiction start?
Well, if you were to ask me how my addiction started before, it would be like the last 2 years. But when I look back on my life, it really started when I was young. It didn't manifest as drugs or alcohol when I was super young, but it manifested as different things. I grew up, I would say, like a really privileged little kid with a great family. Like my parents have been married for 41 years now. But I was always that like curious, rebellious little kid that would get all my work done and talk in school and interrupt people. And it was, it was, it was, let's see, you name it, to get, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it was all, as a little kid, it was very obvious. My mom would say now, like, you're just a 36-year-old version of your 3-year-old self. She always says that. So it's like I always was looking for a way to break the rules or get attention in a different way. And it was always like outside of myself my whole life. When I look back on it, it was always getting validation and anything to get attention, but it didn't come from within. So anyways, I went through my childhood with like I was a very successful like little kid in school. I always got straight A's. I always really tried hard. In middle school though, I was really awkward. I was a really awkward kid. I got bullied a lot. Because I wanted to get straight A's, but that wasn't cool. It was nerdy, and I didn't want to be nerdy. So it was like this really big struggle for me, and it caused me a lot of depression. I mean, I would wear like sweatpants to school, and the other kids, like the popular kids, would be like, using drugs and having boyfriends and having sex and stuff like that. And I never even kissed a boy. So it was like this foreign thing. And I wanted it. Like I always wanted to be that cool kid in middle school, but I never was. And so it caused a lot of issues like low self-esteem and a lot of depression. And I struggled a lot in middle school. So then, but no drugs, no alcohol, no boys, like I said. And then I got into high school, and that's when more of an addiction, I would say, started. Or like you could actually say or identify more of an addiction. And that was with, let's see, relationships. It was always relationships. I've really been in a relationship like my whole adult life. Starting in high school, I had a 4-year relationship in high school. And I came into my own in high school, so I lost a little bit of weight and I was in the popular crowd. But with that, it's interesting because it went from like being bullied to bullying people. You know how they say like hurt people. And when I look back, it's like I regret all of that stuff in high school, but it was because it's painful now looking back, knowing that I was that little kid before. But yeah, so that I drank every single weekend in high school and smoked weed a lot. And it was always to be accepted, be like in the cool kids crowd. I really, that was very validating for me. That was very, I always had a fear of like being inadequate or being rejected or failing or anything like that. And that was validation for me if I was the cool kid or got straight A's. I got straight A's all through high school. I was in sports. I played water polo and swam. And so when it came to like the outside looking in, I was like this perfect student, perfect kid, perfect athlete. I had a perfect family. from the outside. But from the inside, it wasn't like that. I had super low self-esteem. I hated myself. Really, it was my. And I couldn't identify why. I remember thinking like, oh, okay, my childhood. Like I had a great childhood. Like where's this coming from? This like acting out and doing these crazy things. But, I would drive around in my car with my friends. We'd shoulder tap and get alcohol. We'd stuff people in the trunk even to like be driving somewhere. And I got caught 3 different times by the cops. Would have gotten arrested, but they called my parents because I was under 18. One of those times was disco. We'd go to disco every Friday night, and we'd dress up all crazy with me and my friends. But we'd always get alcohol, and we drove down to disco with the intent. We got peppermint schnapps of all things, gross. But we drove down there, and I was driving, and the intent was, my dad loves telling the story. It's hilarious to him, and well, to me now, but it wasn't then. It was horrible. So we drove down there. We had gotten peppermint schnapps. We chugged peppermint schnapps in the car before we went in, and I was literally thinking like, oh, okay, I'll just be fine to drive home after. So we chug peppermint schnapps. We get in there, and within like a half an hour, my friend and I are like falling all over the place. And so the cops grabbed us, and of course, like I grew up with my dad being a paramedic, and he worked all the way up through American Medical Response, the ambulance company, and so he knew a lot of the cops. So this this particular cop knew my dad really well, and so he called him and said, "Look, I have Heather here. If you don't come to pick her up, I'm taking her to jail." And so he comes, and my mom was always the one that was the disciplinarian, and my dad was more of the I'm just going to be quiet and let you know that I'm really disappointed in you. And so they come to pick me up, and I'm, of course, like laughing and falling all over the place and being all stupid. And my dad's like, "Where's your car?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And so he has to walk around the beach flats, looking for my car, and it wasn't the beep beep kind of car. So he's like in the middle of the night walking around the flats trying to look for my car, and he finally finds it, but he's livid at this point.